It has been a day of the most astonishing scenes, from the raging wildfires in California, of people fleeing their homes.
I'll get out of here.
You're gonna be okay, all right? You're gonna be okay.
And of those who staggeringly chose not to. Rescue services were taking any and all measures to try and clear the way to help here on Sunset Boulevard as Hollywood legends watch their homes burn.
One day you're swimming in the pool, and the next day it's all gone. I'm sorry. I'm usually. I thought I would be stronger than this.
Robert is there for us tonight to assess the scale of the damage.
These coastal communities never stood a chance. This combination of the swirling wind that came off this hillside, then the flying embers, and combine that with the bone-dry ground.
Robert will give us the latest in a moment as the fires still rage. Also on News at 10 tonight. Starmer accuses the Tories of shameless opportunism over the demands for a grooming gangs inquiry, but will he ultimately agree to it? Interest rates spike on government debt, so are more tax rises or spending cuts now likely? Trump gets significant blowback from world leaders after his startling press conference yesterday. And stranded in space, we hear from the astronauts who are still a long way from home.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. The home of Hollywood, Los Angeles, is tonight living through what looks to all the world like its own real-life disaster movie. Uncontrollable wildfires produced by recent dry weather are being directed by 100-mile-an-hour gusts towards the city. LA's most destructive ever fires are showing no regard for property values. Among the 1,000 buildings in the suburbs that have already gone, homes of film stars and the super rich. They've been left empty by mass evacuations. Mercifully, those evacuations have saved lives. At the last count, only 2 have been lost. Firefighters won't get the upper hand until the winds drop. That won't be until Friday at the earliest. Of the 4 major fires, the largest is in Pacific Palisades, burning up the equivalent of 5 football pitches every minute. But fires have also erupted to the north in the suburb of Hearst, and in the east, where 2,000 acres are burning at Eaton. And in the middle is the latest, Woodley.
With ferocious winds at times approaching 100 miles per hour, suburbs like Altadena were facing an inferno overnight. More than 2,000 firefighters are battling as many as 5 separate wildfires. Flames consuming hundreds of homes. Embers are being blown more than a mile by the strong Santa Ana winds coming out of the desert of the American West and finding the fuel in California's parched vegetation.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Many left it to the very last minute to flee, escaping with nothing more than the clothes they were wearing.
I'm sorry, bro. I'll get out of here.
Emerging to find trees on fire as entire neighborhoods were surrounded by flame.
You're gonna be okay, all right? You're gonna be okay.
Others decided to stay put and faced a nightmare, unsure if they or their homes would survive. This is a community we encountered this afternoon at the foot of the hills that lead to Pacific Palisades. Not a single structure remains intact. These are oceanside communities that never stood a chance. These high winds, which are still swirling all around me, and then combine that with those flying embers. I mean, just look at the destruction around me. And then combine that too with the bone-dry ground, and you understand why that was such a lethal combination. Like in so much of Southern California, the winter rains here never arrived. We encountered 2 young men who had arrived to assess the homes of some of their friends. Both were stunned by a night that had turned a paradise that overlooked the Pacific Ocean into a scene of such utter devastation.
It's devastating, you know. The Pacific Palisades is just a community. We have a lot of friends up there, family too, and it's devastating.
I mean, it's just terrifying. Looks like a war zone, and it just, overnight, everything's just taken out, you know? And I don't even know what to say.
We have well over 5,000 acres that have burned, and the fire is growing. We have no percentage of containment.
In Pasadena, a nursing home had to be evacuated. 95 frail residents taken out just in time.
A lot of these people are terrified, and they don't have a blanket, they don't have a wrap, they have nothing.
They'll be okay.
I know.
On famous Sunset Boulevard, diggers were being used to clear dozens of cars abandoned by their owners as the flames approached. Nearby in Pacific Palisades, home to numerous celebrities, actor Steve Guttenberg alluded to the chaos unfolding on some of California's most exclusive streets.
Here on Palisades Drive, if anybody has a car and they leave their car, leave the keys in the car so that we can move your car so that these fire trucks can get up Palisades Drive.
Standing in my driveway getting ready to evacuate.
Hollywood actor James Woods posted this video as his home was engulfed.
One day you're swimming in the pool, and the next day it's all gone. I'm sorry. I'm usually. I thought I would be stronger than this. I thought I'd be stronger than this, but you know.
In places where the fire has already blown through, there is total destruction.
This is, oh my God. What? I've never, look at this. Beyond comprehension.
Scientists say winter rains never arrived this year and left the hills bone dry. Multiple fires on a scale difficult to grasp. It looks like a scene from a disaster movie. Hollywood is just a short distance away. But this is all too real, and it threatens the heart of America's film industry. The apocalyptic sunrise over Los Angeles today is a reminder this is far from over, as the city now faces what officials are describing as one of the most terrifying moments in Los Angeles history.
Well, Robert is now in Pacific Palisades, a neighbourhood still in the grip of the fire, from where he sent this update a few minutes ago.
Well, this is the town of Pacific Palisades, and here you can just see how many structures are tonight still burning. The level of destruction here is something I have never seen before along this western coast of the United States. So many communities have been so severely damaged. We know only of a couple of lives lost, but for the firefighters here in Southern California, I mean, this is simply a losing battle. I mean, there are so many structures. There are several down this road, down Haverford Avenue. I'll just ask Mark to pan over here to show a forlorn attempt to fight it. And doesn't that give you a sense of it? A single firefighter with a hose, with diminishing water supplies, trying to put out the blaze. And it's this kind of lethal combination that we have here of high winds, bone-dry ground, and then these flying embers everywhere. So almost any structure here is capable of suddenly reigniting. So Southern California, as has been said by some officials in Los Angeles tonight, is facing one of its very darkest days as it grapples with the scale of the destruction here, of tens of thousands of people who have had to relocate. And nobody is certain whether this is the end of it, or whether more high winds, which are expected in the next 48 hours, could actually endanger bigger, larger communities.
Well, to troubling times back here now for the Chancellor. Making Rachel Reeves's sums add up to fund her public spending plans depends on a stable rate of interest on the money she needs to borrow. But that rate has been rising because of the strength, or rather the weakness of our economy. We're not such a good bet. It has now reached its highest level since the financial crash of 2008, higher even than after that infamous Liz Truss budget. Joel, this feels like pretty bad news.
Yeah, it's bad. It's not trust bad, but it is bad because the government hopes to borrow an extra £100 billion during the course of this financial year to plug the gap between what it is spending and what it is raising in tax. And the cost of doing that has just shot up. Have a look at this. 4.8%. That is the effective interest rates that the investors are charging the government to borrow money over a 10-year period. What's called the yield on government bonds has shot up, as you see, over the last 6 months since Labour won the election. It's risen further. You can see the point there, I think, where the Chancellor delivered her budget. It's gone up since then. Bond yields are back, in fact, at levels we haven't seen since the financial crisis, almost 20 years ago. Now, the UK is not alone. Investors are offloading government debt in the United States, in Italy, in Germany, in France. They started doing this at the beginning of December, but it's intensified in the last few days. And the market view, the reason this is happening, is that investors think that across advanced economies, inflation and therefore interest rates are going to be higher for longer, bluntly, not least because the next president of the United States was elected on a promise of sweeping tariffs, the mass deportation of migrants and big tax cuts. And the suggestion is that actually he may not be bluffing and that he may be going through this. This matters hugely, of course, to anyone with a mortgage, because mortgage rates go up, or tend to when government borrowing costs go up. It matters hugely for the Chancellor because she has made a promise to balance the books.
If bond yields remain at this level, it means that the Chancellor will have to stand up in the Commons on the 26th of March and either admit she's broken her own fiscal rules or announce policies that will trim government spending or increase taxes.
Tonight, Tom, in a statement, the Treasury said no one should be in any doubt meeting the fiscal rules is non-negotiable. That seems set in stone, and the Chancellor has said previously she will not be increasing borrowing or taxes again, which means if something does have to give, it's going to be spending on public services.
One day you're going to be here with better news. I just know it, but maybe not, maybe not soon. Now, the questions at Prime Minister's Questions from the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch did not, surprisingly, some may say, mention the bond crisis that Joel has just been talking about here. Instead, she was pushing for a national inquiry into child sex grooming gangs. Without one, she said, voters would worry there had been a cover-up. Sir Keir Starmer accused her of jumping on the child protection bandwagon. And this evening's vote on an inquiry went his way.
Are you going to change your mind on an inquiry, Prime Minister?
The Prime Minister met some survivors of grooming gangs this morning, but at a heated PMQs showed no sign of changing his mind on a new inquiry into the abuse scandal.
Is the Prime Minister confident that we know the full extent of rape gang activity?
There's no fixed view on the victims and survivors about a further national inquiry. There are mixed views. But there is a view, and I share this view, that what is needed now is action on what we already know.
The fresh focus on the grooming scandal is because of a barrage of posts by the world's richest man, Elon Musk. He urged Brits to phone their MP ahead of a vote tonight, forced by the Conservatives on holding a new national inquiry.
Later today, he will tell Labour MPs, including in Telford, Rochdale, Bristol, Derby, Aylesbury, Oldham, Bradford, Peterborough, Coventry, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Ramsgate, tell all of these people to vote against a national inquiry into the gangs which have systematically gang raped children in their constituencies.
Her recently acquired view that it's a scandal, having spent a lot of time on social media over Christmas, not once in 8 years did she stand here and say what she's just said. Not once in 8 years. They want a national inquiry. We had a national inquiry, the J inquiry, the J report. 20 recommendations, not a single one implemented.
Order, order.
The Conservative amendment, which was defeated by the government, means the party can accuse Labour MPs of voting against a national grooming inquiry. But it leaves the Tories facing accusations themselves of political opportunism.
Only a full inquiry with legal powers to compel witnesses to attend will get to the bottom of this.
The thing that's changed here is Elon Musk. That's what's changed. That's why you're talking about this.
Well, no, I mean, like I say, we commissioned an inquiry. The previous Conservative government commissioned this inquiry in 2015.
That reported back in 2022. The reason you didn't raise this issue last year or the year before is because Elon Musk wasn't tweeting about it. That's what's changed.
That is completely untrue. Conservative Home Secretaries and Prime Ministers have been taking action for 10 years.
After a day of so much noise in Parliament and online, abuse victims may well be wondering if their interests have been advanced at all. Harry Houghton, News at 10.
And Harry, Roberts is here to talk about all this. Look, we watched PMQs together today, and I thought when Keir Starmer said to Kemi Badenoch, did you raise this issue once as, even when you were Children's Minister? Obviously the answer was no. And I kind of found myself thinking, on a day when interest rates are spiking or have spiked over a couple of days, which is wholly Labour's problem, why was she talking about that and not about this massive issue of spiking interest rates?
So look, she does believe, and she may be right about this, that there are voters to be won by focusing on this important issue of whether there needs to be a separate inquiry into the gang organised abuse of children by people of Pakistani origin. It's a real issue. Some would say actually her approach would be stronger if the Tories had done more in government about all of this. They weren't in office all that long ago. And secondly, the other thing which she perhaps ought to be saying, and certainly Labour MPs are saying, is this government ought to just get a move on and actually implement the 20 recommendations of the national report there's already been, which some would say Labour has been too short to do. But you're absolutely right. For me, right now, the government's weakest point is on the economy. We've heard Rachel Reeves say, no more tax rises, and we've heard Keir Starmer say his number one mission is getting the growth up. I thought just now that Joel, always, brilliantly accurate and analytical, was a little bit kind on the government because he was basically saying this is, the fact that interest rates are going up is a sort of global rich country problem led by the US. Yes, that is true, but we have got a bigger problem here. Some of the rise in interest rates is the government's own fault because they are not yet perceived by investors to be delivering on that promise to get the growth rate up. But international investors at the moment are very reluctant to invest in the UK. When investors don't want to invest in the UK, it means the price of government debt is lower than it would otherwise be, and interest rates are that much higher. So there is a genuine crisis coming for Rachel Reeves. It is absolutely clear to me that the tiny amount of so-called headroom she had in her plans has vanished. And unless there is some sort of extraordinary miracle between now and March the 26th, she will have to announce that she's in breach of her fiscal rules. As Joel absolutely said, at that point, she's either got to cut spending or put taxes up. I think either of those is an impossible choice for her. She may try and do creative accounting and cut spending in 5 years' time. Markets will go bonkers because they'll see that as creative accounting. This is not a crisis yet. It could become one for the government.
OK, Robert, thank you very much indeed. Now, the mother of the 14-year-old who was fatally stabbed yesterday on a London bus has spoken of his death and his tragic life story. Kellyanne Bacassa had been in care and living on the streets. His mother, Mary, said he had gone missing for a year and had been taken advantage of by gangs. Mrs. Bacassa said he was a kind and caring boy. This evening, a vigil for Kellyanne was held at a church in Woolwich, which overlooks the bus stop where he died. Now, any plans, real or imaginary, that President-elect Trump has to make Greenland part of the United States using military force, yes, I am really reading that out, were given short shrift by European leaders today. Dan reported Mr. Trump's comments last night and has been following reaction to them today. Dan, I think it's fair to say a lot of world leaders, particularly leaders in Europe, did not like this very much.
No, absolutely. I mean, just take a moment to think about what is at stake here. We're talking about someone who's about to lead a NATO country, the principal NATO country, arguably, talking about annexing the territory of another NATO country. Now, some will dismiss this as more Donald Trump bluster and bombast, but it has caused consternation around Europe today, with some hastily arranged press conferences to push back on the idea of the United States taking Greenland by force.
Just as a matter of principle, for us it is clear the sovereignty of states has to be respected. This is also our diplomatic value and key principle we're working on.
Est-ce que nous pensons que les États-Unis
Do we think the United States will invade Greenland? The answer is no. But do we think we are entering a period that sees the return of the law of the strongest? The answer is yes. Europe must wake up.
The principle of inviolability of borders applies to every country, regardless of whether it is to the east or west of us. There can and must be no compromise on this.
Well, Greenland is a territory of Denmark, of course, and Denmark itself faces a really difficult situation. On the one hand, it's trying to kind of play down Donald Trump's comments about Greenland, while on the other hand, restating its commitment to its territory. And it's also well aware that there is a growing independence movement in Greenland. Why does it want to keep Greenland? Why does America want Greenland? Well, in short, there's vast mineral wealth, its strategic position in the Arctic, and there are new maritime shipping routes which are beginning to open up as the ice flows subside caused by climate change.
OK, Dan, thank you very much indeed. Now, for the thousands of young men and women in today's armed forces, the notion that being gay would affect their ability to serve king and country must sound like something out of the Ark. It is a quarter of a century since the ban on homosexuality in the forces was lifted. But for those of an older generation, including the Army veteran and Olympic gold medalist Dame Kelly Holmes, the way they were treated has defined their lives.
Steve Purvis was thrown out of the RAF in 1985 for having a relationship with another man.
They court-martialed me, dismissed me with disgrace, reduced me to the ranks, took away all my financial benefits, and sent me to HMP Gloucester. I thought somebody would intervene and squash it, and they didn't.
Former fighter jet pilot Flight Lieutenant Caroline Page was grounded when she revealed she was transgender.
The ban was still in place, and all of the opinions were against me being in service. And they said there was a danger and a liability. And it wasn't for a short while until people started standing up for me and saying, hang on a minute, Caroline's not the one with the problem, you are. And when the first voices said that, then more joined in, and I got to believe in myself that I could have a career in the Air Force.
While homosexuality was decriminalised in 1967, the Ministry of Defence only lifted its so-called gay ban on service personnel in 2000. Over the years, hundreds of armed forces personnel faced prejudice, persecution, interrogation, and in some cases a criminal record because of their sexuality.
There we go.
I think that's me.
Yeah, it's a wonderful one of you.
Yeah, I look a lot more glamorous.
Now Caroline and Steve's stories are being told through illustrations, commissioned for the latest edition of Coming Home, a comic that shares the mental health stories of armed forces veterans. The comic stories resonate with Olympian and former Army Sergeant Dame Kelly Holmes, who, despite being made an honorary Army colonel, lived in fear of coming out for decades.
I was fearful of what that might mean if they found out about me. And to be honest, that led me to lead 30-odd years of trauma, fear. I then got to know other people and other veterans that had been through situations where it was very traumatic for their life. And I didn't get the brunt of any of the really bad, vile humiliation that some did. But because I went on to have a really fruitful career and some didn't, I almost felt like survivor's guilt. It just feels like I've gone and had a wonderful career and they haven't.
For Steve and Caroline, making the comic has helped process some of what happened to them and let others understand too.
Has that been useful to be able to say, here you go, read this?
Yeah, it has. It has, because you then don't have to explain warts and all, what happened to you? You say, okay, well, have a read. I'm the third story in there. Have a quick read, and then you'll know. And yeah, I'm very proud of that.
Martha Fairley, News at 10.
The two astronauts who went up to space last summer for 8 days and will end up staying for 9 months say they are looking forward to going home eventually. Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams are now due to return in March or even April, but they don't feel like castaways.
They've been stuck spinning around in space for 6 months now. Navy veterans Butch Wilmore, here in red, and Sonny Williams in purple, set out on their 8-day mission more than 180 days ago. But despite their unexpected extended stay, they say they don't feel like Tom Hanks yet.
Now we have plenty of clothes. We are well fed.
So what you're telling us is you're not channeling Castaway and you don't have a volleyball with a handprint on it that you call Wilson.
No, it doesn't feel like we're Castaway. Yeah, eventually we want to go home because we left our families a little while ago, but we have a lot to do while we're up here. We've got to get all that stuff done before we go home.
And liftoff of Starline carrying 2 American heroes.
The pair first blasted off in June, crewing the first Boeing Starliner flight to the International Space Station. But some of its thrusters shut down on its approach. And now, after lots of delays, they're not expecting to be picked up until March at the earliest. But while NASA hasn't been able to bring them home, they have been able to send them seasonal cargo deliveries.
Brussels sprouts.
For Thanksgiving.
Squash. Apples and spice.
And Christmas.
So from all of us to all of you, Merry Christmas!
But whatever they're up to on board, the station continues to orbit the Earth 16 times a day. Since Sonny and Butch arrived, they've made almost 3,500 journeys around the Earth. And while spirits are still high,
when we get home, we'll have lots of stories to tell, and we'll see you all there.
They are hoping to be home before Easter, so they don't have to send any chocolate eggs to space. Charlie Frost, ITV News.
That concludes the event.
Finally, anyone who enjoyed Scrabble over Christmas with family or friends will know just how competitive it can get. Every letter counts, of course, and never more so than today among players hoping to become the UK Open champion. That's another 17 points, but the prize, another 16 points, is not quite as generous as in other international sporting competitions. 500 quid.
These furrowed faces are players deep in competitive concentration. The tension in this hotel conference room is broken only by the shaking of tiles. This is the UK Open Championship of that much-loved word game. And there are some high-scoring turns taking place here.
Biographised, it scored 143, but it wasn't enough to win the game.
Bigora, I think it's pronounced. I think it's an Irish oath, whatever that means.
I had a dioxide for 122. That was probably my favourite, I think.
They are battling for points in a leaderboard system through 27 games against the clock. Each player gets a total of 25 minutes for all their turns. Despite the exceptional knowledge of the Scrabble dictionary in this room, there are still plenty of challenges during matches. And the tournament adjudicators must be across all the new words recently added, including fam, bruv, and...
words like sea lion, which you think of as an everyday word, which is one word. It's never been in before, and it's one of the most commonly played what we call phonies, non-words, words that are challenged off. So I think we're adjusting with the times of the language, and that can only be a good thing.
As the day goes on, the chances to pick up points slip away.
I've got to talk quietly because noise needs to be kept to a minimum inside the hall. This is the final game in the UK Open Scrabble Championships. Some of these players have been scrabbling for 6 days straight.
But in the end, there can only be one winner.
Harshan Lama Badu Saria.
Harshan's taking home the 500 quid cash prize, but he tells me that for him, it's not about the money.
I think Scrabble is like a perfect antidote to the modern world. You know, people have been addicted to their screens and their smartphones and things. It's 2 or more people sat across a board, focusing on each other and this board game.
Whether it's not so friendly family matches or the competitions of grandmasters, this game of linguistic skill and some luck has enduring fans. Ellie Pitt, News at 10.
That's it. Great story. Good night. Thanks for watching.